Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining in today. I'm Kat. I'm the ACT SAT expert at Magoosh, and we're here today to do a live Q&A about the status of testing over the summer, given the COVID situation. I know there's a lot of interest. We have some questions that have already come in for this event, and so I can dive right into those. But just a few things to say. Like front and center is, first of all, if you have a question, you can go ahead and post it in the comment box and I'll get to as many as I can. I would like to keep the topic focused on specifically what are the ramifications of the cancellations and what might this mean for the admission cycle, but we can open up more broadly if we exhaust the questions and need to move a different direction. But there is a lot of uncertainty. This is something at Magoosh, and I have been following really closely, and I think I'll just go ahead and dive in. And again, this is for both the ACT and the SAT. Right now, there are no tests scheduled until June. So the first test date right now that's on the schedule is the ACT, and that's June 13th. So, and then of course the SAT isn't scheduled until the end of August. So this has left a lot of people scratching their heads, especially in conjunction with all the schools that have decided to go test optional for this upcoming academic year for people who will be mostly going into their senior year right now, applying to colleges in the fall. So I have a couple questions here, and so let me just start with, this one is from Yolanda Beard. And the question is, are all colleges waiving ACT and SAT requirements? And the answer to that is no. Actually, the majority have not gone that direction yet. I think there were several prominent schools that decided to take that measure in a relatively short period of time. So the UC system, but being California State, University of Washington, Oregon, there's Case Western, Tulane. I mean, there are several. And I think a really good resource in this regard is the NACAC site. And so that stands for National Association for College Admission Counseling. And they've put together a database where you can go and search school by school and see anything that has changed either in testing requirements or admission deadlines. They're even posting things that affect students who are going into fall right now, such as a lot of students now know which colleges have accepted them, those who are graduating right now, and many schools have pushed back the deadline in terms of when students need to notify schools in order to secure a spot. So basically, it's a really thorough database, and it's really the only foolproof thing to do really is to go directly from the school and hopefully hear back from their admissions. However, it's taken a lot of time for admissions to get back with students and families. So I think the second best tool out there is this. So it's the NACAC. And we can link that below the event when it's over. So Benjamin Kidsom, what are your predictions for the June ACT? Do you think they will be canceled like the June SAT? And that's a question I saw this question a little bit ago, and so I've had some time to think about it. And also a couple of my colleagues have done some research independently. And the short story, unfortunately, is nobody knows. A lot of this, I believe, is going to hinge on what the states, all 50 states of the US decide in terms of school. Is school going to be in session? Summer school, basically. So if all of the states are at a situation where it's up to the decision of the local school board, local school district in terms of whether group events will be permitted in school settings or things of that nature, then I have every reason to believe that the June date will go through. And it is 2 months away. However, there's still a lot of uncertainty there. I know that here in Berkeley, the UC system, their college courses have gone online for this upcoming summer term, which leads me to believe that there might be still restrictions in place in terms of educational events, and it very well could get canceled. A couple things to keep in mind. First of all, is just that the ACT is a smaller organization than the College Board. So what this means is the College Board, they start to see this threat on the horizon, this potential that they'll need to close down the test, and they move more quickly, hypothetically, partly because they can't pivot as quickly. So the ACT is a little bit smaller, and what they've been saying is that they don't want to cancel test dates less than a month out, and they might still do that. But I think there is reason to believe that they'll try to keep those dates open until around March 20th and then make a call. So I'm sorry that the answer isn't more definitive. I would say that if you're able to get spots in either June and July and there isn't anything time sensitive, I think signing up for the July is going to be the much safer bet. But I could honestly see it happening both ways. Just again, keeping in mind that if any of the 50 states are under some kind of lockdown, it wouldn't be fair for the ACT to have the test. So make of that what you will. Sorry, I don't have a more definitive answer. So we have Hannah Potts. Should I submit ACT scores for class of 2021 if I already took it and did not get the score I would like? Okay, so class of 2021. So I'm assuming this is somebody going into their senior year. They're deciding if they should submit the score. And I mean, a lot of this depends on, I'm not sure if whether or not the student is considering taking the test again or not. So I kind of have to answer the question in two different ways. So if the student is planning on taking the test again, some schools require that students send all their scores. Most schools now will let you just submit your highest score, or sometimes do super scoring, which is going to be a widespread option beginning this fall, which is where you can submit your highest score from each section. And so it's always an advantage to, I don't think a student needs to take the ACT or SAT multiple times, but taking it twice can be a good practice, especially if they're not happy with their initial scores. However, if the student is not planning on taking the test again, and the question is more along the lines of, I've only taken it once, I didn't like my scores, now I'm applying to colleges, should I submit this one set of test scores that I took? For the vast majority of students, I suggest that they do submit them. I think that the only cases in which it's going to be a disadvantage to submit scores is if there is a really, really marked difference between how high a student's GPA is and how low their test scores. So if there's a really big difference between those two, really high GPA and far, far below the 50th percentile of test scores, then those students, if that school is test optional, of course, might not want to submit. However, I think that if a school is going test optional, they realize that it's a student's choice to submit. And so for a student to submit their scores, it portrays courage, responsibility. It shows they took the initiative to take the test. And I think that they're not going to penalize students very, very harshly, if at all, if their test scores are lower than optimal, given the fact that they have made the schools that I'm guessing students applying to has made the test optional. So I think that when in doubt, definitely send your scores. It will look courageous to the school, and the only times I would caution against that would be those very rare cases where a student's scores are, very, very quite a bit lower than their GPA in terms of like percentiles. Tressa Henry Howe says, Henry, how will you test for the ACT? Will we be doing it online on June 15th? The answer to that is I highly doubt it. The ACT has been saying for years that they're going to start allowing remote proctored exams by computer. And for a long time now, they've been planning to start rolling that out in larger populations of students, because some students have already done this in a limited context. But September of 2020 has been the date for a long time that the ACT has been planning to start rolling out this option. And I think that it's not likely that it will be much before that, if at all. So June 15th, you can expect that it will probably be just the regular in the test center test, assuming that the test does go as planned, as scheduled. So this is from Trisha. Will colleges understand that juniors specifically were disturbed this year? So juniors who are going, yes, definitely. So I think that a lot of these accommodations that are being made are specifically being made for that exact cohort. For students who are now juniors, who will be seniors next year, that's the year of students who they're predicting will be the most affected by coronavirus. So what I had said in an earlier video to students is that we have to remember that if you think about what the universities themselves are dealing with right now, they had to switch to an online format halfway through the semester. They had to get students out of the dorms. They had to figure out what they're going to do about summer school. And so the upcoming admission cycle isn't necessarily their first priority. However, the fact that so many schools did come out pretty quickly and say things like, we will go test optional, speaks of their awareness that this is going to be the group of students who probably, in a lot of ways, is the most affected. So I do believe that, yes. When will the ACT start allowing online testing? Like I said, I think that September 2020 is a very likely start date for that. Doesn't mean it's going to be widespread, though. Could be in small contexts and then start rolling out. For people who want to take the exam, like sometime between now and maybe the end of the fall, I would not count on an online test. I would prep for it the way that you might prep for just the regular test, because I don't think it's going to be a widespread option for at least another 6 months. Okay, another question about grades. Our second semester grades were submitted by a pass-fail system. The thing is, my first 9 weeks were graded, were the best grades I've ever received. Can I tell a college to look at them regardless? So first of all, a lot of colleges have already come out proactively and they've said that they understand that a lot of students will be submitting pass, no pass grades. They said that early on, so that's on their radar. They know that. In terms of, can I have them look at my grades anyway, I really don't know what your transcript's going to look like. So this is going to be a question for you to ask the administrative personnel at your school, if they can tell you a little bit about what your transcript will look like. It's likely that you'll need to go and get some kind of external documentation notification of what your grades were going in. And so I don't think it would be too early or too pushy to ask your high school teachers right now, if that's an option, because it's probably more fresh on their minds and closer at hand in their records So I would say reach out to both the administrative people at your school about what your transcripts will look like, and also contact all of your teachers and ask if they'd be willing to document what your grades were going into that switch in the semester. This is from Sebastian. Hi, how will this situation affect students applying for September 2021? Do you think institutions will ask for SAT scores? I've already spoken to this somewhat, but this is going to be the group of students who is going to be very affected, the students who are applying beginning in the fall, this upcoming fall. And many students are already, or many schools are already saying that they're going test optional. So a lot of schools have not yet disclosed what their policy is going to be. The best thing is to keep in close contact with the schools that the student is applying to. And again, that NACAC link is a good one, so you can search by school what policies, if any, have changed. Let's see. When will the next SAT test most likely take place? Are there going to be any other cancellations? So right now, the College Board is saying the next test is the end of August. And I know that they're looking into adding other tests. I think if they did that, they would probably do that by June. I would imagine that it wouldn't be a very last minute thing if they suddenly opened up more test dates for August. Will there be more cancellations? Well, the SAT has been pretty liberal with cancellations. So they've already canceled, from March all the way in through July. And not, a lot of that time there weren't tests scheduled, but there could be more test cancellations in the fall if, as some are predicting, we have a resurgence of the COVID. When the weather gets cold again, there's reason to believe that there might be periods of time where different states are going through some kind of a shelter-in-place situation. So it is possible that there will be more cancellations. I think what a lot of schools are trying to do, what the SAT and ACT are hoping to do, and what they say they're hoping to do, is just to add more dates overall in those months that they have scheduled dates. So I know the ACT has talked about having 2 per month. The SAT promises they'll have at least 1 per month from August through December. But it could be that there are more cancellations. If they are, I think they'll be more towards the fall. So the only SAT is on August 29th. Haven't been able to confirm that. Is it true? As far as I know, yes, that's the date that we all have been following and posting, August 29th. And for international students, that is only the subject tests that are going to be available. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. I don't know how many international students are listening right now, but there are, it's been even more of a hurdle for those students. My daughter just coordinated her upcoming school schedule to graduate a year early. This creates a predicament where she is likely applying without the SAT or ACT. How might this impact her admissions decision? Well, I'm not sure exactly the details here, of course, or when she's graduating or will be sending all her application materials, but there are a number of schools now that are going test optional for this upcoming year. So I'm guessing that she's graduating in 2021. In that case, that is the group of students who are entering their senior year right now, who will have the option of applying to many schools test optional. We just don't know how many schools yet are going to go that direction, but many already have. So in that case, she wouldn't need to take the test for those schools. But I think that there likely will be opportunities for her to take the test. And it sounds like it's a stressful situation trying to graduate early, but if there is an opportunity for her to take it, I would say go ahead and take it. She doesn't have to submit the scores. Even though, as you heard in my earlier announcement, I think it's usually best to submit the scores. Is it likely that the July ACT will also be canceled? I think that one is a lot less likely to be canceled. I think June, there's a good chance. July, it's also possible, but I think July is far more likely to go through than the June ACT. This next question from Marie. Even if a school is test optional, don't they still use ACT, SAT scores for scholarships? How are they going to determine eligibility if we don't have an ACT, SAT score? That's a great question. Yes, so that is something that's even harder to track. How different institutions, organizations who grant scholarships are going to be tracking this. I think the best thing to do is to reach out to them again directly. But I think at this point exactly is another good, it's a good argument for taking either the ACT or the SAT. And another one that I've pointed out to students is that some schools, for instance, in the UC system, if you score above a certain number, I think it's 600 something on the SAT, and I don't know, 30, maybe 29 on the ACT, something in that range, you can test out of your initial writing requirement. So that's, a whole quarter course or semester course that you don't have to take. So there are reasons to take the ACT, SAT, and I think they're trying to make it as fair as possible, but the reality of the situation is that there are going to be students upset regardless of which decisions are made about going optional or not. So I do think that it's best to take the test if possible. How would scholarships be dealt out if the school is under the mindset the scores are lower than they should be? This is from Morgan. I'm thinking that this means scores are lower than they should be. Maybe that, I'm not sure I have enough context for that one exactly, but I will say, so one of the concerns is that without having the ACT, SAT being required everywhere, that more students will be accepted with lower overall scores, or had they taken the tests. And I'm not sure. I think that things like grades, I think the essay, this is like, I try and drive this home a lot, but I used to do a lot of pre-college counseling and tutoring, and the essay to get in, the admissions essays count for so much more than you realize on the admissions side of things, because they can tell so much about a student from the essays. So, and a lot of scholarships are awarded largely because of essays. So GPA, essays, engagement, service, I think those things will just count more across the board in this upcoming year. What can I do if virtual school is affecting my grades? Oh, that's a question I haven't received yet since this has all happened. Well, I mean, the quick answer, the first place I would go would be see what you can do to raise your grades. Try and reach out to teachers. A lot of times this happens in these situations is because the communication between teacher and student starts to break down a little bit. So I would say, see what you can do to try and raise your scores first. And then afterwards, if you still have some damage control to do, I think that's an opportunity to try and mention it in your application, either in the form, the fill in the form portions, because a lot of times there are some places you can write paragraphs, or in the essay. And again, not framing it as, poor me, this happened, my teacher did this, but rather describing a little bit what happened, what you learned from the experience, why you will be a better student going forward because of this experience you had. So frame it from sort of a growth perspective and what you learned from it perspective. As a student from the UK, if the situation is fine by June in the UK to do the ACT, but the situation is too dangerous in the US, would the test go on in the UK? I really am not sure. I mean, there are different deadlines, there are different test dates, different policies. The ACT is acting differently than the SAT when it comes to the international versus national student populations. I think it's likely that if it's already planned and the testing centers and sites are already squared away in the UK across the board, that they probably wouldn't cancel it if there wasn't a health reason to do so. But I'm not entirely sure. So sorry, I'm not sure how they're thinking about that particular situation. This is from Nicholas. How is COVID-19 affecting international SAT testing? So again, it has been particularly hard on international students because they've canceled all the basically spring and summer test dates, other than the subject tests, which are still scheduled for August. And they have said that they're trying to find dates to add. The hard part here is they're trying to find something that's going to work internationally, and we know internationally that different regions of the world are at different stages of the pandemic. And so I think that that's a situation where internationally it's that much more important to try and reach out to the schools you'll be applying to, because there could be other hurdles you run into as well. I know that some students are concerned about getting visas. What if they have to go home again? What if they can't? What if travel restrictions are in place? You know, there are a lot of unique situations for international students where I would reach out to sometimes it's called the Student Life Department of Admissions, or it's something residential living is part of it, but usually there's an organization that's kind of like the Student Advocacy Center within a university. And I would, in addition to finding out like hard facts about admissions, I would reach out to them and see if they can offer guidance. This is from Ala. How is online proctored ACT, SAT, how might it look? How is proctoring handled? Will we be able to take the ACT online is another question from Anna, but those are all kind of grouped together. So how it will look like, well, I think with the College Board, a lot of students are soon going to be taking the AP exams online. And so that kind of gives us a glimpse. Also, the GRE is going online. A lot of the tests are moving towards an online platform. High school is actually one of the groups that has not adopted this as readily as these other standardized tests for the college admissions. And so I think it's likely to be a shorter exam. They're not going to be testing on things that are going to be easy to look up quickly. They might ask to have a camera placed somewhere. There might be another person that's asked to proctor. So it's going to be a combination of trying to have some kind of checks in place externally, and also the honor system, and also a different test. It probably will not be the exact same test that they've been giving. They'll try and work it in a way that having a search browser open isn't going to be as much of an advantage as it would in a testing center. Any idea if students, this is from Marie, any ideas if students with accommodations, such as time and a half, will be accommodated with online testing? Okay, so actually students with accommodations have been among the students who have been able, in certain cases, to already start the computerized testing. I know this because I tutored some of these students. It was like 3 years ago, and they did have time and a half. And so yes, I think students with accommodations, I don't think it will be a problem when the online versions go into effect. Benjamin, how will they handle AP testing, such as cheating, proctoring, etc.? And I'm not sure. I really am. I haven't looked into the nitty gritty of how the AP tests are being proctored right now. And I know that we have some of those resources at Magoosh. I didn't personally write them. I'm curious now because I think it does give us kind of glimpses at what they might be doing with the ACT, SAT soon. So I will be looking into those, but I'm not sure how they're handling testing and how they're monitoring for that. This is from Nathan. As a freshman in high school, how can I start prepping for the SAT, ACT now? And how will my PSAT translate to the SAT? I think, well, taking the PSAT as a freshman is already you're ahead of the game. That's pretty early to take the PSAT. Looks like you had a very high score on the PSAT. I think the best ways to prep for the exams are to take classes, take challenging classes. So if you continue to take math, sometimes what happens when students are kind of ahead of the game is they stop taking math. I've seen that happen. I've seen students who get higher on the PSAT than the SAT because when they took the SAT, it just wasn't as fresh in their memory. So you want to do a combination of taking challenging classes, but still take practice tests. And there are some differences between the PSAT and the SAT. So just making sure that you get plenty of practice with the actual exams. But you have quite a while still. And I think that if you just take, maybe a practice test every 3 months, you'd get a lot of practice tests in between now and when you're a junior. I think those are the best things you can do. Take practice tests, take challenging courses, make sure that you still know the fundamentals. If you get too advanced and you're not remembering like what was covered in Algebra 1 or geometry. Casey, I know this is off topic, but what are some good study tips for studying for the ACT? So the ACT is largely a pacing test. The ACT moves very quickly. You want to really master your pacing. You want to become really good at deciding when to hold on to a question and when to just let it go. And of course, you never want to leave a question blank because nothing counts negative. You could always get a point just by guessing randomly. Study tips for ACT, read a lot, practice speed reading. You want to practice the science section because that's very unique. Nothing in high school, I don't think, really prepares students for the science section of the ACT. So you want to use practice tests to do that. And I think also just the ACT requires a little bit more memorization. So you have to know the math formulas and you need to know some science content. I think the grammar, they're more sticklers for grammar rules. That's been my experience. And so Magoosh has a lot of free resources and we can link some of those, but we have flashcards, we have a free practice test, we have a downloadable list of math formulas. So those are all resources that we can link to this video. Morgan, how will Magoosh help students who still wish to take the test but are unsure of the next test date? So, well, Magoosh has been extending accounts. We've been trying to encourage students to study on longer timeframes. And so offering students a longer period of time to study for the same price, basically. So that's one thing that we're doing. And if you're unsure of the test date, another thing we have is we have resource pages that we're updating at least once a week with everything that we learn about changes to the testing cycle or policies. And I think that, we're advocates for students. And so those are the two things that we've done so far, as well as having these videos. We're going to continue to have them. We're hoping to be able to release at least one a week for the next few months, specifically to address students and parents and teachers' concerns. So if you have other ideas of ways we can help you, let us know, because we love hearing from students and you might have some ideas that we haven't thought about. This is from Anna. I'm currently a junior. Do you think I will have time to take the SAT and raise my score? I've also not taken the SAT. Yes, I definitely think there's time. I think that a lot of students, I myself took the SAT the second time as a senior. So it usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks for the test scores to come out. And most schools don't have their admissions deadlines until well into the late fall, early winter season. Early admissions are more like early November. But even still, a September test date, October test date, for a lot of students, that's going to be enough time. And between now and then, there is quite a bit of time to study. I think 2 months to study is a really good time frame for the ACT, SAT. We know a lot of our students do it in 1 month, but I think there is plenty of time. And you don't, and speaking to this other, you don't need to take both. The ACT, SAT, I would say take a practice test for both. And if you are doing way better on SAT practice tests, there might be reason to take the SAT. Otherwise, you've already taken the ACT, and so I would stick with that test. This is from Kaylin. I got a pretty good ACT score, but for the extremely selective schools I want to go to, my score barely reaches the 25th percentile. Should I keep trying to retake the test? Should I send my scores? Okay. So I would say, I don't know, I'm guessing you've only taken it once. I would take it a second time. In the 25th percentile for the ACT score for a selective school, that's actually not that low if you think about it. So there's kind of like, there would be the bottom quarter of students, the top quarter of students, the middle 50%, and you'd be sort of at the bottom of the middle 50% is sort of how I think about that. So if your grades are over on the 75th percentile, I mean, I think you're still competitive. I would still send scores. But if you can raise your score, definitely try and do that. For the ACT, again, I would be asking you questions about how is your pacing? Are you spending too much time on the questions that you really just don't know and not enough time on the questions that, like the questions that are sort of at your edge, I call them? Those are the questions you want to spend the most time on. Questions that with a little bit more time, you'll get them right. Whereas there will always be some questions on the test for most students where you're just not going to get them. There will be a couple questions where it's probably best to guess for the majority of students. So learning some good test strategies could really help. And I think that, again, the science section in particular is one where students who practice for it really are able to raise their scores quite a bit. Also math, you probably will have more math experience as the semesters go on. So I would encourage you to probably take it again if it's just for the second time. Helen, do you think it's likely that the SAT will be canceled even through winter? I don't think it's likely that it will be canceled continuously through winter. I think that it's very likely that the August test date will happen. It's possible that it won't. I mean, there is that possibility. But if I were to predict based on what I know now, and I'm not making the government decisions, I'm not an epidemiologist, I would guess that there will be test dates probably in late summer and early fall. And then there might be extra cancellations in the fall, although who knows, that's debatable. But I think it's more likely that those test dates will be canceled. And I don't think it's that likely that the late summer test dates will be. This is from Morgan again. I first got a 26 as a sophomore in the ACT, and on recent practice tests, I got a 28 and 29. Is it realistic to get a 30 within the current time constraints? I think so. Yes, I don't think that that's out of range at all. I usually tell students to submit a 2-point score increase goal. And so you are definitely right about there. Also, practice tests, I'm not sure which practice tests you're taking, but overall, practice tests, sometimes they're too easy, sometimes they're too hard if they're not the official tests. But if I had to say, most practice tests that were done by prep companies erred on one side or the other, I would say they err on being a little bit, on generating scores that are just slightly lower than what students will actually get. Now, that's not true across the board. So you might be using sources that err on the other direction. At Magoosh, we do a lot of pre-test, post-testing, and correlation with students' earlier scores, and we have a lot of metrics that we track to try and make sure we're giving accurate score estimates. But yeah, I think that's definitely within range. This is from Brooke. Do you think scholarships will extend their deadlines that require SAT, ACT scores? I really need bright futures, but I'm scared of the dates getting canceled. I think that hopefully scholarships will extend their deadline. I mean, you have to remember that whatever situation you're facing, it sounds like something that's pretty generic. It sounds like any student who's going to be applying for this scholarship is probably, unless they took the tests quite a bit earlier, is facing a similar situation. So again, be proactive, reach out, be patient if the response isn't immediate from these people, because people have very strange schedules right now. You never know what's going on, but it does not hurt to ask. It's well within your right. Just ask, because they know more than I do. They know more than you do. They're the source. They might not have the answer yet, but they're the best source for the answer. And hopefully those accommodations will be made by a lot of scholarship awarders. Okay, how important are the subjects that you study in high school? I have a curriculum with no math or natural sciences. Okay, so I'm not sure if this means for the tests or for college admissions more generally. It really depends on the college you're applying to. And so if you have a curriculum with no math, no natural sciences, I'm guessing you're probably looking at schools that are humanities or art-based. I know a lot of art schools don't require students to have a math or natural science background. Some do. So it depends on what you're aiming for and what your goal is. In terms of taking the SAT, ACT, I think students without a lot of training here can probably still score decently on the math section of ACT, SAT, if they at least have through 8th grade math and can self-teach or have a tutor or do some kind of prep. All right. This next question is from Hannah. What are some good college essay topics? Okay, I have no clue what to write about because I'm boring. Okay, good college topics. So there are good, almost anything can be a good topic. It's more about how you come across to the school. And I spent so much time with students specifically on this, trying to get them to make the switch from, instead of trying to sell yourself, everyone's going to tell you that. Everyone's going to say, sell yourself to the school, package yourself. And I think that's the wrong orientation. I think you want to be thinking, how am I going to make their school a better place? Which is a little bit different than, how am I such a catch? So it's kind of like, what will you offer? What can you uniquely offer? And so you might start to think about experiences you've had, maybe traveling abroad. It could be something that happened in your family that influenced you either in a momentous way. Think about the experiences that have made you who you are, that made you stronger, made you more compassionate, made you more tolerant, giving you a bigger perspective, has inspired you. Maybe it's something more intellectual, more creative. And then think about, how will that make you a better student, a better peer, a better citizen? How will that make you do something great with your life into the future? So think along those lines and speak along those lines. Say, I want to come to the school because my goal is to help people. It never hurts to say that, in such and such way. And I think that most people do have that goal on some level, but it can be lost because students get so hung up on the scores and the grades that they forget that's what schools are really looking for. Is they're looking for a student who can make a unique contribution to their school, be a positive influence on other students, and also do something great with their life afterwards. So just keep that in mind. So I would just really think about your passions. Think about what has inspired you. This is from Anna again. Maybe it's a different Anna. It's probably the same one. Looks like there are a few from her. I am currently a junior now. Do you think I will have time? Oh, that one I already answered. Oh, this is from Donatella. Why is it that seniors of 2020 can't have their exams optional? I was going to take the SAT, but it got canceled. That doesn't seem very fair. Classes of 2020 are struggling too. Yeah, I thought about this quite a bit when the announcements were first made about 2020, and I looked into it quite a bit. And I think the answer to it is just that by the time March came along, most schools that require require ACT and SAT scores, most of those schools, the admissions were already closed. They were already giving students word on whether or not they've been accepted. So I did think, I bet there are some situations out there where students are applying for schools that have a very late deadline. Maybe it's maybe you're applying for mid-school year. Maybe you're applying for the next spring of instead of the fall, one semester later. I'm not sure what the unique situation is, but I think that that's why they didn't make that changes now. Because at that point, by March, a lot of schools had already made their decisions. They were already sending out admissions, decisions and offers. So I'm sorry if you got caught in that. But I'm not sure what your situation is. Reach out, be proactive. If there's anything we can do to help, let us know. But I think it just didn't occur to, I think that it was the minority of students who are in the situation you're in. So I'm sorry that happened to you. Okay, so this is from Dave. Are colleges that previously required SAT subject tests relaxing that option? I think I did look into this when all this happened, and it looked like some colleges were, and I don't remember the proportion or which colleges. But that's, again, that resource that I mentioned at the beginning of this Q&A, the NACAC, they will have all of that listed. And so, yes, there are schools that have made the subject tests optional. This is from Trisha. Will in-state colleges get more competitive for current juniors because out-of-state and private schools are more expensive, especially with the economy right now? Okay, so in-state colleges becoming more competitive. I'm not sure I'm putting this together. I see what you're saying. I see. Okay. So you're saying because students who normally would have applied to expensive schools might be applying to like schools that aren't as competitive because they're less expensive. That could happen. Yeah, that is possible. That has happened before to some degree in economic downturns, but it's not by a huge margin. What happens is a lot of people go back to school when the economy starts to falter. And so if anything, schools, I remember I was teaching in colleges in the 2008, 2009, in that era. And the colleges were just, they were booked everywhere. So it was hard to get classes. They were competitive. I think that is what happens a lot of times when the economy starts to go down, that the schools become a little bit more competitive. Now, in terms of the testing situation, there were a lot of articles that went out right away saying maybe this is going to make it easy on these students who are juniors now because they can submit grades that were pass, no pass, because they don't have to submit SAT, ACT scores. It depends on how you look at it, right? It depends on what you are banking on. And when if you had really awesome grades up through fall of your junior year, then that's, those students are really lucky. For students who are really wanting to turn it around spring of their junior year and tried to, but got pass, no pass options, that wasn't lucky. So it depends on your situation, but it's likely that there will be a lot of students trying to enroll in colleges at the same time, and then I'll move on to the next question because we only have 7 minutes left. At the same time, we're looking at a pandemic as well. So this isn't just the economic downturn. We're looking at a situation where there are travel restrictions that are likely going to be in place to some effect for quite some time, which might mean that out of state, that students aren't leaving their state as much. It could mean fewer international students coming, and all of these situations could affect how competitive the admission cycle is in a number of ways. And I think that's what we'll see. Some factors will make it more competitive. Some factors will make it less. questions from Melissa. And then I think I'll do 2 more, and then I'm going to wrap up this Q&A. So this is from Melissa. How long will it take to practice for the SAT? I think that 2 months is great. I think that you can do it in 1 month if you really focused and really put in a regular study time. In terms of hours, what we found, we found this through external research, and then we also validated it through our student population, that when students put in about 30 hours of focused study, that's about when you can expect to see pretty, more remarkable score improvements. So 30 hours across 2 months is, very doable. 30 hours across 1 month, when you have a bunch of classes to take as well, it's still doable, but it's quite a bit harder. You're looking at an hour a day. That's a lot. So, 2 months is great. 1 month is also pretty good. Okay. And so last question here, how can I score in the 30s on the ACT math section? I think you just need to find out which sections of math are pulling you down and get good at those sections, because a lot of times students say, I'm not good at math, and they're not breaking it down. Well, what part of it? Is it the geometry? Are there certain, do you just need to review probability and statistics? There are certain subcomponents. So by taking practice tests, you can really narrow in on the areas and then try and get a lot of practice in those areas at your skill level. So don't try and answer questions that are too hard for you right away. Try and answer easier questions and build up. And do test prep if you need to, or tutoring if you need to. Okay, so a couple things in conclusion here. I just want to point out that we have a blog post on college admissions, and we'll be including that in the comment feature. We have several articles and blogs that we've been writing over the past month or so. And also right now, Magoosh Prep is 20% off. So throughout the end of the day, and that, just gives you that discount if you're interested in. We do have a score refund guarantee, so it's not too risky to sign up. And like I said, we have free resources that we'll be linking to this video as well. And if there are other ways that we can support you, please, or other live Q&A events that you'd be interested in getting information on, please let us know. And until then, I hope that you are as safe and healthy and calm as possible. I know it's been a very, very challenging time for everybody. I mean, this is a situation that some people were alive in the 20s, 30s, and have seen something similar situations economically, perhaps, but it's really unprecedented. And we know it's really hard for students and young people in particular. So we're here for you, we're rooting for you, and wishing you all the best. Take good care.